Truckers of Reddit, what is something you have witnessed driving at night that gave you chills? Part 2. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Not me, but my aunt. She was driving at 1 a.m. down rural roads in the UK. They tend to be quite narrow, no paths and no lighting, and didn't see a jogger in the road wearing all black. Sadly, she hit him and he died. The emotional toll on her was too much. She quit driving and became reclusive for some time. Not mine, but my grandfather's. One night after completing his water delivery, he stops at a roundabout to let the other car go through, but it doesn't, and soon people hop out with knives and tools, and they yell at him to cut the engine and to hop out of the truck. He guns it, smashing their car out of the way, and goes around the roundabout and drives to the nearest police station and tells them what happens. He thinks they were trying to steal the bulldog from his truck because the only way to get it is to steal it or buy a Mack truck. When I was only new to the truck driving game, I had a job driving all over continental Europe. I'm Irish. I was sitting in a restaurant and on the French side of Mont Blanc tunnel and heard a couple of old boys tell a story about a rookie who lost control of his truck on the way down the mountain. He rang his mother and told her what was happening just before he crashed off the side and was sadly killed. My dad used to drive for a commercial grocery store back in the day. This was probably around 1975 to 80. The route he drove took him past a hospital for the mentally ill. Apparently, the place wasn't known for its security because my dad said he would pass people walking on the road in varying levels of nudity. He said he would see about 1 or 2 escaped patients a week, and eventually became a pretty normal thing. He told me the creepiest part is sometimes they would look at the headlights the way deer or wild animal would, and he was terrified that one day they would just run out in front of the truck. They never did though, just stared and watched him drive by. This happened a long time ago to my grandfather's friend. That friend was an experienced trucker and was kind of training a younger one, taking him to where he went. So it's midwinter, and they're driving through a snow desert stretching for as far as the eye can see. It's middle of nowhere, and there was not a soul for literally hundreds of kilometers around. I should have clarified, that story is taking place in the Soviet Union, somewhere near Omsk back in the 60s. This means there were practically no traffic whatsoever, because car ownership was very limited at the time. A trucker could drive for hundreds of miles without seeing a single car. While they were driving, an immense blizzard hit, them reducing the visibility to 1 meter max. They kept on driving until they went off the road and got stuck in the snow. Again, with no passing cars, their situation was desperate. There was little food, no heating, no other supplies, and the blizzard could potentially continue for days. After 6 hours of what I imagine was a very uneasy waiting, the fear and panic took the better of the young and inexperienced fellow. He insisted they should walk along the road and try to find help. Keep in mind, there were no towns or cities for hundreds of miles around. The older fellow tells him to calm down and wait. If they went, most likely they would die from exhaustion and exposure, and their best bet would be to at least wait for the sky to clear. There was not much hope even then, but at least a better visibility would give them a slim chance to reach safety. The lad, however, was extremely nervous, and they began to argue. It escalated, and the younger one grabbed a wrench. My grandfather's friend had a knife in his hand, but decided not to risk it. His partner got out of the truck, barely even opening the door, and stumbled away knee-deep in snow. My grandfather's mate waited there for another day, and in the morning, he was rescued by the military, who were sent to look for them, guessing that they got stuck in the snow most likely. He and a group of soldiers left the truck there and continued along the road, since the help came from the trucker's starting point, point A. The other fellow went toward their destination, point B. In a few kilometers, my grandfather's friend saw a small black object, barely visible in the sea of white. His heart stopped because he was guessing what this was. He yelled at the soldiers to stop the car. Upon inspection, buried in the snow was his young partner. The black object was his cap, which could have easily been missed because he was buried so deep in the snow. The body was sat upright, frozen and rigid as stone. The trucker told my grandfather that the cold has perfectly captured the expression of profound despair and horror on the young and boyish face of the lad. That fellow blamed himself for the rest of his life for not stopping him, for failing to convince him to stay. Not something I've witnessed, but happened to me. I was driving down Hell's Pass in British Columbia in the winter when my truck started to jackknife. The cab was right up against the trailer, and I was being pushed down the hill sideways, 7 to 10% grade. I managed to use the trailer brake to bring cab back around and bring the truck to a safe stop, but still, scary as hell. My dad's a trucker, has been for about 50 plus years. The most horrifying thing that he saw happen to him was a really hard accident on a northern Canadian road. A small car, think like a Volkswagen Beetle, was in an accident. I think a large truck hit her head-on or something like that. Anyways, the accident was so severe that pieces of this woman were everywhere, and the road was filled with blood and other bodily matter. This was fairly late in the night, around 1 to 2 a.m., and the Department of Highways sent out one lone guy as a cleanup worker. My dad drove past the accident and saw this guy throwing up in the ditch, so he stopped and asked him if everything was okay and what was going on. So the guy told him about the accident, and my dad saw everything. The guy was really struggling to clean everything up, and my dad, being the type that'll help out anyone and everyone, helped him clean everything up. This was a few years ago, and he still has nightmares about it. My dad, a truck driver in the Netherlands for about 30 years now, was leaving our town at 3 a.m.ish to do the deliveries to the stores. He drives off with a colleague, and a kilometer outside my town, he hits the brakes because there's a horse on the road, alive. His colleague behind him stops as well, and is informed about the situation over the CB radio. 2 trucks, which look the same, both yellow-blue Scania box trucks with an additional blue trailer, are standing still on a B road in the middle of the night. A guy pulls up behind them in an Audi A6 station wagon. He, of course, did not know what was going on, and after a few minutes, the horse wasn't moving. He got very annoyed with the trucks standing still, so he absolutely floored it to go past them. He crashed into the horse, killing it and totaling his car. Guy went to the hospital, and this all happened under the eye of my father. Pretty terrifying shit. The guy ended up surviving, but my dad was pretty messed up about it. A month ago, a truck driver passed me at least 60 miles per hour and crossed to the other lane to get ahead of everyone else before crossing back to our lane. Thing is, he couldn't go back to our lane because it was closed up ahead. It was a narrow 2-lane road, like each lane for an opposite direction, and they were doing road work on it, so they closed one lane, put a bunch of signs and traffic cones and cops to direct the traffic. Because there was only one lane left and cars coming from both directions couldn't ride there at the same time, that would cause a head-on collision, which is why our side of the traffic stopped entirely, because there was a giant glowing red X in front of us and a traffic cop signing us to stop, because there were cars from the other direction. But the truck driver didn't see the cars coming at him, yet from behind all the red cones and signs, and just ignored all glowing red lights motioning him to stop or at least slow down, and kept going, cutting an entire line of cars who did stop, until he reached the head of the line just when cars started coming out from the opposite direction and right at him. Never seen a truck brake so hard in real life before. Thankfully, it was a small truck because he stopped pretty quickly and was even able to move a few inches to the side so he wouldn't block the road completely. Don't know who got scared the most, the truck driver, the poor driver who he nearly crushed into, or the other drivers watching it. I was driving on a 2-lane road through New Brunswick, Canada, Highway 17 towards Glencoe, around 3 a.m. I have never driven this road and there was nothing around. It was in the middle of nowhere. I hadn't seen another car for at least an hour. I passed 2 people and a car on the side of the road looking at a car that was flipped over in the ditch, but still had its lights on, so it looked like it happened recently. The car on the side of the road had no apparent damage. I initially drove past them about 200 meters, then stopped and reversed back to them, and got out to see if they needed help or a phone or anything. I asked if everything is okay, and they responded in French, not uncommon in that part of the country, so I just motioned to my phone like, "Do you need my phone? Do you need to phone someone?" They looked at me and said something else in French, and I got the feeling they didn't need me, so I started walking back to my truck while looking back at them to confirm they were okay if I left. It just seemed surreal, After driving for a long time and seeing no one on the road, these two guys were just standing on the side of the road talking and looking at a flipped over car and didn't seem to be doing anything about it. Also, later that same morning around 7 a.m., I passed a car that had just hit a moose waiting for paramedics. For the person, the moose was dead. I could see the moose's heart on the road still. The scariest thing that has ever happened to me. About 10 years ago, I ran out at night to a 7-Eleven to get a pack of smokes. There was a 7-Eleven right outside my subdivision. I'm standing in line and a huge dude gets in line behind me. No big deal. I'm not a small woman myself. I'm about 5'10" and at the time was almost 300 pounds. But this dude was substantially larger. I'd say about 6'5", close to 400 pounds. He complimented my necklace and I just got the creepiest vibe from him. And I never ignore creepy vibes. I know better. I said thank you, got my smokes, and got into my car. As soon as I'm pulling away, he's getting into his truck and starts it. I pull out of the parking lot left. So does he. I pull a right turn into my subdivision. So does he. I go up 2 more streets and go to pull a right onto my street. So does he. At this point, I'm pretty freaked out. So instead of parking outside of my house, I just keep driving around my neighborhood. He followed me around for 20 minutes, taking every single turn I did. I was just about to call the cops or my dad or someone when he gave up and turned down a street that takes you out of my subdivision. Stay alert, folks. Ex-tow operator got a phone call from my wife who was picking me up at 1 a.m. She calls frantic, screaming there's been an insane accident, but she only sees one car. Our shop was a block away. I get there to light it up with my emergency lights and block the scene for first responders. There's only one car. This is a 6-lane bridge that goes over the throughway. The car's engine is inside the firewall. There is no front of the car. I get out and am talking with this guy who was in shock. I ask him, "Were you hurt?" He says no. I pulled over because I thought I had a flat tire. I walked around the front to look at the passenger side, and as soon as my foot hit the curb, I heard a loud bang. I turned around and my car is gone. My next words are, "What did you hit?" He said nothing at all. Now I'm more confused and hint at the front of his car is gone. He says, "Nope, that's not my car." WTF. So I start looking around. There isn't a car on the road and nothing within eyesight, which I can clearly see, a quarter of a mile, and there's nothing anywhere. Some lady comes walking by and he says it's her car. She's hammered as hell. Police and fire get there, and for about 15 minutes, he's looking for the car with me. Another cop radios him and says he found the car. It went over 6 lanes and a median, down, then up the throughway on-ramp, up a hill through a fence, off 4 parked cars, into a pole half a mile away. The thing was in park. The car's rear bumper was against the front seat. Estimated her speed at 100+ miles per hour and no tire marks. If he would have just a 1/10 of a second delay stepping on that curb, he would have been beyond dead. I was off the clock, but helped the police secure the scene until accident investigation showed up. Neither person was hurt and both cars were totaled. I've seen many fatal accidents as a volunteer firefighter and a wrecker driver. I have never seen anything like that folks walked away from. I recovered cars and extracted accidents that were nowhere near that bad. Note, car was in park, which doesn't mean a lot. All you have to do is break the park paw and it will roll. But to go that far, over that much stuff and mostly uphill, and her with such extensive intrusion into the car, even bent the A-pillars, there had to be divine intervention. Not a trucker, but 10 years ago as I bicycled through Belize, I stopped to sneak camp at a day-use area, which was a small parking lot, handful of picnic tables, and a short trail to a blue hole, lots of them in the region. I enjoyed a nice swim after everyday users were gone, and pitched my tent next to a picnic table. I wake up around 3 a.m. to the headlights of several trucks. Being in Belize, and Belize being Belize, I didn't think twice, and ran into some bushes wearing only my underwear. A dozen of shadows came out of 2 trucks, rolling big empty barrels across the parking lot and into the woods. Came back with the barrels full, loaded up the trucks and took off, all without noticing me. Didn't sleep super well after that. Not a truck driver, but I saw a truck flip over and it gave me chills, so here's that story. My boyfriend at the time and I decided to walk to McDonald's and smoke a joint on the way. We finish our joint and are about to cross the street to McDonald's, right beside the entrance exit of the Ambassador Bridge, the busiest truck crossing between the USA and Canada. As we wait to cross, a truck comes zooming by and drives along the curve to get onto the bridge, but he took the curve too fast and the truck flipped right onto its side. The momentum kept the truck going though, so it was dragging across the road and sparks were flying everywhere. It flipped probably about 5 meters away from where we were standing. After about 5 to 10 seconds of dragging, it comes to a stop, and all of a sudden, a wave of Border Patrol officers start flooding out and heading toward the truck. Myself and my ex, high as balls, could barely believe what just happened, but we hightailed it out of there. I used to drive buses, and I did what we called the first sign on shift that started between 3 and 4 a.m. One morning with a workmate at the depot, we get out into the yard to start our buses up, then I hear him scream, and then see him come bolting out of his bus, scared the shit out of me as to what was happening, so I tentatively go and investigate. Turns out there was a homeless man asleep in his bus, and when he started the bus it woke him up, but the homeless guy did not say a word, and just walked down the bus to get out, scaring the shit out of my coworker when he was right on top of him. We used to have a good laugh about it after the fact, but at the time it was scary as shit to experience. I thought someone was trying to kill him at first. Not a truckie, but I do a bit of nighttime driving here out on the road when hardly anyone is around. Anyway, I live in NSW, Australia. I need to take a leak, so I pull off the highway somewhere near Bargo around 1 or 3 a.m. While the stream is flowing, I felt like I was being watched. I nervously check for headlights on the horizon or the soft sound of tires on the road, but nothing is coming. I'm just about to finish, and I hear a loud snap of a twig. I'm scanning in that general direction, but I can only make out a long shadow, and I thought I heard a low growling noise. I quickly reach for my torch and turn it on. I see nothing. Unfortunately, the batteries had almost died too, but whatever it was, I could hear the faint footsteps running off in the distance.